Okay, today we welcome arguably the most dynamic actor on Broadway. He has been in 8 Broadway shows, which is soon to be 9. This Tony nominee just appeared in the Signature Theater's production of Assassins and will soon be back on Broadway in A Beautiful Noise, the Neil Diamond musical. Everyone, welcome to Take a Bow, Will Swenson.
Yay!
Yeah! Oh my
As the
gosh,
Kermit the
this is
Frog voice.
um,
Yay!
I love it. It's amazing. There you go. That's your next role. Uh, well, thank you for coming on today. I'm very excited to talk to you about all the things. The way I usually like to start my episodes is that I like to ask my guests what got them into theater, what made you want to tell stories and be an entertainer.
I had no choice. Um,
Oh,
I grew up in a theatrical family. My
oh, wow.
grandmother, who was born in 1908, I think, was just drawn to the theater, and she became a playwright and started a theater in Glendale, California, in the 40s, and just started doing her own plays because she couldn't afford royalties. And then the theater, did better. And so then my mom, was in plays, and then they put me in plays. So I got thrown on stage when I was literally 2 years old,
Wow.
and I've kind of been just doing it ever since.
So you're from California?
I grew up in California till I was 12, and
Okay.
then my family moved to Utah, where we started our own theater.
Wow.
And now my brother runs a theater in Utah. Yeah,
Wow, that's
kind of the family
incredible.
business. Kind of wild.
So when you came to New York, was it to be on Broadway, like for your first show, or did you move before that?
It totally was. I mean, I went to school in Utah and then got my equity card. I auditioned while at school. I auditioned for Disney World and got I got a part
Yes,
doing the Beauty and the Beast show at Disney World. So I got
right.
my equity card and I was down there for a couple of years, and then I got a tour. And then my first wife and I, discovered that we were pregnant. We were like, let's not drag a child around the country on tour. Let's move to the city with all of this 1 or 2 credits that I've got. Surely
Got
things
it.
will go great. Um, so
Oh my
we
god.
moved to the city definitely with the hope and expectation of me being able to make it on Broadway, but it took a minute.
Yeah, well, I mean, it worked out, so that's good.
Thank
In the
goodness.
end,
Thank
yeah. Well, talk to me about your Broadway debut, which was in Brooklyn.
yeah.
What was it like to be on a Broadway stage for the first time?
Well, it was amazing. I mean, when I got cast in my first show, they cast me in the room, which they never do. I've
Whoa.
never been cast in the room once, other than my Broadway debut. And I'd been kicking around town for about 4 years and stressing out, and I'd had a baby by then, and just thinking I'm never going to make it. And I was pregnant with my second child, and
Oh
they
my
cast me in the room. So I walked out and got downstairs at the elevator at Chelsea Studios and just bawled on
god.
26th Street. Um,
Oh wow.
but doing the show was amazing. Although I was hired to be a pit singer slash understudy. There are only 2 gentlemen in that production. It's only 5 people in the whole show,
Mhm.
and so I was hired to cover Clevant Derricks, who was like a 55-year-old 6'4" black man,
Oh
and
my god.
then Kevin Anderson was the white dude that I was a little closer to, but not really close in type to either one of them. At any rate, um, they had converted. It was then called the Plymouth Theater, which I think is called the Schoenfeld Theater now. And the pit singers were put literally in the offstage bathroom,
Oh my
which had
god.
this little tiny anteroom. But I'm not kidding you; it was maybe 6 feet by 6 feet big. Just we were just like crunched in there, 4 of us,
Yes,
singing the background vocals
that is
for the show.
amazing.
And we did get to go out and bow at the end of the show, but it was so bizarre because we kind of went out with the band that also was not on stage.
Mhm.
So we would pop out, and the audience would kind of go, "Oh, I guess they're with the band." And so it wasn't the fulfilling, center stage curtain call that one
Sure.
imagines when one's dreaming about making their Broadway debut. It was more of a hello,
Hello.
I'm here. But I mean, my dream was as fulfilled as it would have been otherwise. I was so desperate to get to check that box off the list. I had been on Broadway.
Right.
It's one night, but I did it. So,
That's amazing. And then it just kept rolling from there,
oh
no?
my goodness, thank
That's a
goodness.
so, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, you most recently were in Assassins, and it was crazy for me to go see that because the last show I saw you in was Earl in Waitress.
Oh yeah.
And I was just like, these roles are so vastly different. It's insane. And then I looked up what other shows that you've done and everything, and all of your roles are just so diverse, and none of them are like any of the others. Like, what would you like consider yourself? Would you be a comedy actor, a comedic actor, or would you be a dramatic actor?
um, I love that you have to ask that question. That's kind of been my goal,
Yeah,
is to be that guy that nobody can kind of pigeonhole and say, oh, he does this. Let's get Will Swenson, or he's that guy.
yeah.
Um, my agent, I think he says you're a you're a character man in a leading man's body, is what he says.
Wow,
And
it's very true.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, yeah. The fact that anyone would think of me to play Guiteau um,
Right.
is a huge compliment. I think I started out in the business, and people were like, "All right, well, he can be the rocker, or he can be the stoner, or the abusive guy." And granted, I have been cast as those guys quite a little bit, the hippie, but I've tried really hard to play against that idea and show that I can do lots of other things, and hopefully not get pigeonholed as to being only able to do one thing.
Yeah, because I'm literally like, you take Assassins, you take Waitress, you take, and now the Neil Diamond Show, like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, like none of them are like the same thing. And it was just like, it's amazing. So that I love that you don't want to like pigeonhole yourself to anything.
Oh, I
It's
mean,
really
that's the fun
cool.
of it, right? That's why we
Yeah,
do this. I mean, I think some people enjoy doing the one thing over and over again, and they're really great at it, and that's awesome. But that's super not for me. I mean,
you like
the
the
whole thing,
challenge.
exactly. The whole thing that appeals to me is disappearing into a whole other character, a whole other
Yeah.
psyche, discovering these awful compartments of our of our emotional makeup that we would never be able to express in real life, but be able to get out these awful things on stage. Like that's the fun for me.
Totally. So speaking of Assassins, you guys recorded a cast album,
Yeah.
which comes out this Friday, March 18th. Very exciting. What are you most excited for people to hear in this cast album compared to the others?
The orchestrations is my
Yeah,
answer to that.
interesting.
They're brand new orchestrations. Our music director, Greg Jarrett, with the blessing of Stephen Sondheim, did these amazing new orchestrations. And it's no comment on the old ones at all.
Hmm.
But because John Doyle, our director, likes to put the band in his shows quite a little bit, half of our cast were musicians also.
Yeah.
And and the idea behind the orchestrations was to kind of try to capture that sense of Americana that Sondheim wrote toward in his music. Like everybody's song sort of reflects the musical genre of the time in which they lived.
Hmm.
So there's there's the folk songs and the fiddle songs and bluegrass songs and like vaudeville songs and then up into like 80s pop with John Hinckley. And so it's pretty wide range of musical styles, but just all encapsulated in the Americana idea, which the show is kind of about, is America's identity and who we are and how entitled we are, for that matter. But,
Right.
but I think the orchestrations are just super masterful and beautiful, and I can't wait for folks to hear Assassins through just with the altered lens of these orchestrations.
Absolutely. So I have to ask because I've only seen that version of Assassin. So
Uh-huh.
like I literally can't imagine it done any other way with the performers playing the instruments.
Uh-huh.
On the album, are they performing
Yeah,
the instruments?
yeah, yeah. They're the guys.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. For those that didn't get to see the show, our production had four, um, or was it five? I think just four actor musicians that sang and acted in the show, but also played part of the orchestrations. And then up above the stage, we had three just full time musicians: our music director on keys, and then bass and drums upstairs. So
Mhm.
it was that exact same group of folks for the cast recording.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So fascinating.
I
I
mean,
loved
the fact that those guys can do what they did, I can't even tell you. Like, it's hard enough for me to like walk and sing at the same time,
right.
and these guys were doing choreography while sometimes singing and playing and often playing music, multiple instruments. It was
Right.
insanity what those guys can do.
Oh, it's amazing. It made the show, truly. Like, it
Mhm.
was just so enjoyable to, like, watch that and just watch the live music right there on stage. You don't have to look up or look into the orchestra or something to
Yeah,
see that.
nice privilege to have the music with you right on stage as well.
Oh, I bet. You
Yeah.
could hear it better, yeah?
Yeah, well, and a challenge because the two groups of musicians were apart from one another, so that became challenging sometimes because the music director was up behind us and we didn't even see him, not even on a monitor. So we sort of just had to mentally lock in with what we were going to do and set some things pretty rigidly so that the tempos could work
Right.
each time we got there. But so there were pluses and minuses to the staging arrangement.
Totally. Well, when was this recorded? Because I know Assassin's Run got shut down a little bit early because of a
Uh,
COVID. Was it afterwards or was it
That
during?
was after.
Oh, wow.
We were supposed to run to the end of January, and I think we only had to cut off 1 week. We had to
Hmm.
cancel our last week because we all got COVID, and then we
You
recorded.
too?
I did too. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah. I think about half our cast had had it before, so they didn't get it again. We
Got
had to
it.
shut down. We only missed, I think, one show, maybe two shows prior to that, because Omicron was just racing through the city of New York.
Literally.
We were so cautious and careful. Anyway, it got in at the end, and then the
It's a
other
good
half.
time to get in. At least
Yeah,
you don't have to cancel the whole run.
yeah, at least it was only 1 week. Um, and then we
Rec-
recorded it, about a month later.
okay.
Not even a month. It was like the beginning of March, I think. Or beginning of, this is the beginning of March. We must have done it
Yes.
pretty quick. I think we must have done it at the beginning of February then.
Interesting. Well, it's good that, like, I mean, it sucks that you guys didn't know that you were having your last show or you didn't have your last show like properly, but you were able to like almost have a last show or a second go at it in the recording studio, which is really cool.
Super nice. Super nice to get a little bit of closure.
Yeah, for sure. I have to talk to you about Waitress, and I have to talk to you about your performance in that because Waitress is actually one of my favorite shows
Oh, yeah?
on Broadway.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, literally. I was so excited when they brought it back and everything. Talk to me about your experience in that and just what it was like to play Earl and kind of go there every night, 8 shows a week.
Um, Waitress is such a cool show. It's so I love it because it's messy.
Yeah.
It's like, there are archetypes in it. There's the heroine that you root for, and there's a kind of bad guy, and then there's, kind of a hero. But they're not 100% those things. Like Jenna is messed up and making bad decisions.
Right.
And, the typical hero, he's having an affair with a married pregnant
Right.
woman. Like that's messy. And my
Right.
character Earl, like, he could be seen as just this villain, but he's also just like sad and lonely and unfulfilled and unable to communicate his pain. And like it's just there's it's so not clear cut. Everybody's got real struggles that they're dealing with, and because of that, I think everyone in the audience recognizes themselves in a portion of it. It's just really relatable. Everybody's struggling to get where they're going. It's just not cookie cutter theater.
Totally.
Yeah.
What was it like to perform with, I mean, you performed with so many incredible leading ladies and you played opposite of them. But Sarah Bareilles, like she literally wrote the show. Like was there ever added pressure because it was like, "Oh, you wrote it. I hope I'm doing it just." Like,
Oh, it's funny that you say that because I don't think I ever felt intimidation from Sarah, ever.
wow.
And
That's great.
I think just about any other composer, like if I was doing the show with a composer, I think I would feel completely. I'm trying to envision doing the show with like doing if like Michael John Lacusa was a performer, I would be like terrified to perform with Michael John, even though
Sure.
he's the greatest guy. Um, but Sarah's like the last person to ever be judgy. I just
Oh,
no, it was never anything but complete support, and she was so complimentary about my take on the role. And
wow.
honestly, I think she was our roles were reversed maybe a little bit. She was quite nervous coming into to be the performer because I think she at the time I think felt like her sweet spot was writing, which
Mhm.
let's let's
Let's be
credit where
honest.
credit's due.
Yeah.
She's an incredible songwriter, one of my favorites before I ever met her.
Mhm.
So I think she was nervous to try something else out and be under the Broadway scrutiny spotlight. Um,
Sure.
and she had no need to worry. She just like Sarah's like a truth seeking missile. She just like she can't lie. I don't think she can lie in life, and she certainly can't lie on stage.
Wow.
She just was a natural. I was so mad at her. I was like, "You've never taken an acting class in your life.
No.
This is what she's just completely honest and completely flexible and different every night. Like that
Right.
level that you hope to get to with some of the greatest actors where it's a real, tennis exchange of back and forth. She just inherently immediately had. She was just the loveliest. Couldn't have asked for a better scene partner. And now that you've pointed it out, the fact that she could have had an energy of judgment
Yeah.
is that was never there is just an added bonus.
That's amazing. I have to say I'm a little embarrassed to share this, but I just have to because I loved it so much. I came home, I thought it was Sarah's story, and
Oh, really?
I had no idea. I was
There was
like,
a movie.
This new musical about Sarah Bareilles is amazing. It's called Waitress," and I was telling my parents about it, and my mom was like, "There's a movie
There's a
called
movie.
Waitress that's exactly that story," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Dear Lord." So I thought, because I hadn't seen Jesse Mueller or anything, so when I first saw it, it was Sarah Bareilles, and I was
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh, she's like reliving her life on stage 8 shows a week. That's insane!" Like, and I was just like, I got. I got humbled really quickly. Um, I have to talk about working with Diane Paulus because I always have to shout out her out when I talk to someone that's worked with her because I know what it's like working with her, and she truly brings out like the best in all of her performers that she directs. So, what was it like to work with her, and how much did she help you, really find yourself in Earl?
I mean, Diane's the best. It was my second time working with her for Waitress, so
Hmm.
we already kind of had a vocabulary, so to speak.
Sure.
So we could skip some of the niceties of discussing things and just kind of um, talk it out. I mean, I think Diane's great at sort of encouraging you, almost forcing you to create a big backstory.
Yes.
Um, like as you might know, in the process of working up her show, she often has her casts do a whole presentation about your character and like a big homework assignment, and it's really daunting, and it is super challenging. But it what it does is it creates a whole universe for everybody, that a whole backstory and a whole community um, that goes a long way on stage. So knowing that that's the kind of thing that Diane was going to want me to have prepared, I did do a lot of kind of thinking about Earl and why he got to where he was, and how somebody becomes like that. And my
Hmm.
process is different, I think, for just about every show I do. But this one, I was like, well, it's an ugly truth, but people do abuse their partners, and it's
Right.
awful, and they're real people. So YouTube is like this amazing tool that we have now that actors didn't used to have. But I went down the rabbit hole of just like watching. I started by watching sort of talk shows where women were saying that they were in abusive relationships, and then they'd bring on the husband, and if it was like a Jerry Springer show, it's they're playing to type, and they would only bring in people that were going to be these caricatures of abusers. But
Right.
on other shows, like a Dr. Phil kind of show, in walks this completely normal dude who's not
Hmm.
raging right now, and he's just like, I know it's terrible, and I do lose my temper, but that doesn't mean that I don't love you. And just like speaking completely earnestly, and it's like, okay, this is a guy that has beat the crap out of his wife, and he's completely normal, and he's completely justified. He thinks he's completely justified in his complaints, and
Right.
he allows himself to take it to this level, and and it's just sort of sad and terrifying. And I'm so sorry to do. I apologize. You're
It's
fine.
okay.
Thank you.
Eh, sorry about that.
No, I'm so sorry about
You're good. You're good.
that. um, so, I mean, to go back to your question about Diane,
Hmm.
she just inspires you to do a whole lot of homework, and
Yes.
know who your person is, so that you can be relatively loose on stage, and plug in your homework to where the text supports that, And it's always just great to work with somebody that you worked with before and know that you have a good relationship with them and
Right.
that things are most likely going to go well. And they did.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's interesting because, like, working with Diane, I've never had an experience like that, especially those presentations that you're talking about. Um, I had never even thought to do something like that for a character, especially like the first time that I did that was with her was in Pippin, and I was just playing Theo, and it's just like, he has like a tiny role, like it's not very in depth or anything like that. But when she really was like, no, I mean, he's still a person, he has to have like a backstory, and he has to do all these things. And I was like, this is insane. Like, I would have never thought of this. And then, like, doing that work for auditions and for any other roles that I did in the future, she taught me how to find that and to
Mhm.
find that story, and to really, and finding that story made it come to life on the stage in a way that just wouldn't have happened if I didn't do it, if I did it any other way.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
it's just fascinating. She really helped me a lot in becoming the performer I am today. So I always shout her out when
Nice.
people work with her. Uh,
Nice.
I need to talk to you about hair. First of all, you have a lovely set of hair on you right now. Um,
A little big.
but yes, thank you. So hair is you got a Tony nomination for it. You are a Tony nominated performer, and talk to me about that experience. I mean, once again, it's a show that's completely different to all of the things. It's just a hippie show, and you're nominated for a Tony. Like, what was that like for you, and being nominated and doing the show and all the things?
I mean, it was great. We all have that one show that sort of just like sits on top of the rest of them, and just like you're like,
Yeah.
ah, that was the top of the mountain. And for me, this far, I probably would say that Hair is
Oh.
is the one. I'm still just the closest with those cast members. We have a text thread with our whole cast on it that lights up at least 3 times a week.
Oh.
Everybody just loves each other, and it was just special. It went through different incarnations, and some folks came in and out, and then in again and out again, and it's one of those shows that you have to sort of buy into the idea of it to make it work. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to walk the walk of Hair in order to perform Hair.
Sure.
So you have to really become a tribe if you want to do that show. So I inherited just all of my best friends, and to that point, the pinnacle of my performing career, and to get to do something that loose. Like, my favorite thing is you know the elasticity of a show or a role. Like, I love to make things as different as I can within the limits of the structure of the show
Sure.
from night to night, and have gotten in trouble a time or two because of my love of that. But Hair facilitated that and encouraged it, and that was our currency, was making it something completely different every night. So, and because that's the magic of theater, and in that instance, taken to the extreme of what a performance could be, what a different night, how that can vary from the night before. It was just, oh, it was just heaven. It was so fun, and then to have it be a success, and to be recognized by the
Yeah.
industry and other folks as being a production that other people responded to, was just icing on that cake.
Absolutely. It doesn't help that you're playing around every night with goofballs like Josh Lehman and Matthew Morrison and all those guys. No, I love them so much, but they're so fun to work with, right? It just
Great,
like helps bring out some play on the stage.
great folks, just the best, and so silly. And
Yeah.
the fact that we could goof around a bit, and that was part of the fun, was, sometimes you'd never know what was going to happen from night to night,
Right.
and it was okay. But that was great. Yeah.
Totally. I can't. I love those guys so much. They're the funniest, especially Josh. He
Oh,
makes me
Josh is
crack up.
crazy.
Josh can say hi and it'll make me laugh. Like it's just one of those guys.
Yeah.
But I have to ask you, Javert. You played Javert in Les Mis. I mean, literally, probably one of the most iconic roles like on Broadway is just like anything in Les Mis, honestly. But Javert, like, how cool was that for you to perform in that in such an iconic show like that?
It was awesome. It was insanity. And honestly, I said to my wife the other day, I was like, You know, of all the shows I've ever done, when I look back on Les Mis, that one seems like the most impossible, like
Ah.
the biggest kind of dream. I sometimes can't wrap my head around the fact that I played Javert on Broadway.
Yeah.
I I imagine that it's because I grew up with Les Mis, and it was just really one of my more inspiring shows where it's just like, "I wanna be up there, I wanna be on the barricade." And
Wow.
I auditioned for it over and over when I was younger and just get called back over and over, and then I never booked it, and I think I'd given up hope of ever being in it because all that was left for a guy my age was Javert and Valjean, and I was like, "Well, that show's closed, and I don't foresee them reviving it." And then they
Mhm.
did, and I went in and I got the part. I can't believe it. I still can't believe it. It was
Insane.
it was amazing. Yeah.
What did that kind of feel like your, like, Broadway debut moment where it's just like, this is it. This is I'm doing it."
A little bit. I mean, as actors, we're all convinced that we're never gonna work again after the next show closes.
Right.
Like, "Okay, well, I'm glad that I had a good run because I'm never gonna work again."
Mhm.
Um, and to get a big role like that was thrilling, and to get that iconic of a role, and no, it was incredible. Yeah, it definitely the curtain call for Les Mis certainly fulfilled
Yeah.
the void that Brooklyn might have set up.
Yeah, totally, I love that. You get your own bow, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice. Well, it's just there's so many things to talk about, especially like Javert to Priscilla, like all of these things. It just, I don't know. What's the difference, or for you, with a show like Les Mis, you have all of these blueprints. You know, it's a show that's been around for years and years, and you have shows like the Neil Diamond show that you're about to do, and Waitress, and all these things where you're kind of originating roles. So, talk to me about like doing a revival that has a blueprint that already has an existing performance, compared to one that you are creating in the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. I love creating. A new show for me is just candy. I
Yeah.
love the rehearsal room, the feeling of creating something that's never existed before. That's the thrill for me. If I could get paid for rehearsing, I think that's probably what I would do because I just
Oh
get
my god.
so much fulfillment. Some people hate rehearsing, but like that's the magic for me. I just throwing stuff up to see what works and just being completely like it has to be a safe room. Like if it's, if you feel intimidated or judged, you're not going to try stuff and you're going to be embarrassed if you fail. And but in the best of all possible worlds, your rehearsal room is like the safest place in the world. Everyone wants the show to be as good as it could possibly be. So
Hmm.
you try these absurd, terrible things that sometimes fail. And, I'd be horrified if that stuff made its way into the world. But once you lock into something and try something that works and make a new discovery, that's that's so fulfilling. And to
Sure.
do that in a place where nothing existed before is true creation, and that's what just really turns me on. It's harder to find that in the rehearsal room for a revival, or replacing somebody. Like if you're doing a revival, at least you have the luxury of saying, "All right, well this time we're going to look at it through this lens. It was told over here before. Now we're going to do this."
Right.
So if you're mounting a whole new revival, that's great. The hardest trick for me is popping into a role that you didn't create and that you're replacing in the same production because the show's up and running and it's just this locomotive that's going to do this thing,
Right.
and you're obligated to hit the same marks and to an extent hit the same emotional marks to be able to facilitate the performer that you're playing opposite, who's just got a
Hmm.
new cast member opposite them, and they're like, if you throw too big of a
Will,
curveball.
I lost you. I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Oh no, can you hear me? I'm here.
About like replacing a role is kind of like the more challenging thing for you because you have to hit all the spots.
Oh, right, right, right. Yeah, replacing in an already running show is kind of the trickiest one of all, for me. Because there's these, the show, I liken it to like a runaway train. It's going to do what it's been set up to do, and you have to hit all of these marks, and sometimes emotional marks, sometimes physical marks, that the whole mechanism around you needs you
Mm,
to hit, in order to make the show go off. If I come in and decide that I want to do a backflip in this moment that wasn't there before, then clearly the show's not going to work as well. And
right.
and if I'm in a completely different emotional place than my co-star, who's been doing the show with another performer, and I come in and mess up that flow, that's kind of, a bit of a left curve for them to have, and an unfair one often. So that's the trickiest one, and the one where I feel like a puppet a little bit the most,
Hmm.
because it's just like, okay, well, I'll say the words like you want me to, and I'll do the movements like you want me to, and
Sure.
it feels a little bit like you're not having as much input as you would like, which is why I love doing the new stuff.
Yeah. Well, when I hear you talk about how much you like love to play and everything, would you ever consider doing it from like a director's standpoint? Because I just feel like you would be an amazing director.
Oh, thanks. I have directed, and growing up in a theater family, I
Hmm.
directed stuff. Most of the stuff that I've directed was when I was much, much younger, but I did love it. I feel like I get a little over controlly, and and uh, and I get so much fulfillment out of performing that
Mm,
I haven't really had that urge for a few years. Um,
interesting.
but I do like watching directors and seeing their different techniques, and some are very controlling and others let you fly a little bit more, and just discovering what works for me as an actor a little bit more, and taking pieces of the process and kind of going, that works for me, that works for me, and then plugging that into the next role and seeing if that's a little more helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I've always been fascinated about directing, but I don't know if I would ever do it myself. I feel like it's a little intimidating, you know? Just taking it from script and like putting it on a stage. It's amazing what how their brains work and all of that.
Right.
Yeah, seriously. So like I mentioned earlier, it was recently announced that you will be playing Neil Diamond on Broadway, which is like so cool.
Amazing.
Sticking to this whole kind of dynamic about like replacing or reviving and originating. I mean, this is a very unique situation because you are creating Neil Diamond, but at the same time, like he's a real person. So, like,
Right.
how do you approach playing something like that?
That's the challenge, I guess. I was when I was doing Assassins, I was saying I think this is the first real person that I've ever played that actually existed,
Mm,
and interesting that you sort of that's a certain limiter of your choices. Uh, and now to be playing somebody who's actually exists and is still alive is another thing to consider. And then also, just as a performer, he's a very specific thing.
mhm.
So, I mean, the challenge will be to not make it a caricature, I guess,
Right.
but still honor the sound and the person. He's got an amazing life story, and an amazing charisma and voice on stage.
Hmm.
So we have done some workshops so far, and it's been a lot of fun discovering how to channel him, and not be kind of a cartoon character version of Neil Diamond, but
Right.
uh, but a real person.
Yeah, and also kind of making him yourself, you know, a little bit finding you in him too is fascinating.
Sure.
I'm so excited to see it for sure. It's going out of town in Boston first, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
this and then it's coming to Broadway in the summer.
Well, no, we're going to Boston June and July, and then I
Uh-huh.
believe back to Broadway after that.
Got it. Got it.
So
Got it.
it'll either be in the fall, possibly the spring of next year.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because this was announced in like 2019, like I feel like before the pandemic that this was a thing in the work. So how long have you been associated with it?
Since then, we did
Oh, okay.
some work on it, and then the pandemic hit, and everybody just had to sit on their hands for a couple of years.
Wow.
And now that the things are clicking again, we were able to get moving on it.
For
But
sure.
it's a pretty exciting one.
Yeah, I mean, if you could sum up the show in like one word, what would it be?
One word.
Yeah. You could do
Um,
2 or 3, I guess, but no more than 3.
I don't know. Let's see. That's funny. Um, uh, Raw stage presence. I don't know.
Raw stage presence. Okay, that's fair. Hey, I'll take that. Is it gonna be like I don't know. I don't know. I guess because I've seen Six now. I don't think I would have imagined this before, but like you know, Six is that like concert feel. Is that kind of like what it's gonna be, or is it more just his journey through life?
Oh my gosh, it's all of it. It's such a cool concept. I won't give away too much
No, yeah.
because it's too cool. But one of the it's just told from a really emotional standpoint. It's written by the screenwriter Anthony McCartan. He wrote
Mm,
like the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, and he's
right.
writing the Whitney Houston biopic now, and
Oh,
just
amazing.
an awesome dude. Um, and he hadn't written for the theater before, so he wrote this Neil Diamond musical without any kind of ideas about musical theater conventions or um, structure,
Hmm.
and which is great for creativity, but not necessarily great when you actually have to make set pieces and scene changes and but it's being directed by Michael Mayer, best in the business,
Yes.
and Movement by Stephen Hoggett, who's best in the business. Both just geniuses who have these huge, caseloads of artistry to pull from, and they are able to take these ideas of Anthony's and put them on the stage in a way that you had never really thought of before. So structurally, it's different from any ideas you might have about a bio musical.
Sure.
It's definitely not just a we're going to tell the life story of Neil Diamond, and now he's in concert, and now he's at home, and it's the furthest thing from that. Um,
Okay.
Everything comes from a very emotional standpoint, and time isn't necessarily in order.
Hmm.
It's just so cool. It's so cool.
I'm so excited.
I'm so
I'm so
excited.
excited to see it. And once again, like you have so many cool things coming out. Like I'm excited for this, and then of course I'm excited for the Assassins cast album. So everyone, go check that out on Friday, March 18th, or tomorrow if you're listening to this the day it comes out. But Will, this has been amazing. It was truly so much fun to meet you, and it was a great time. So I appreciate everything that you shared with us today.
Oh, equally here. Nice to talk to you, Eli. Best of
Thank
luck with
you.
everything.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.